So my name is Courtney Burke, and I'm one of the project managers with the home team. And as Haley mentioned, I'm going to go through the CPD income eligibility calculator and just how it works and just a brief overview. So the CPD calculator is located on the HUD exchange. In order to utilize the calculator, you do have to have an account with the HUD exchange. So if you don't have an account, you can make one for free to utilize the calculator. Something I wanted to point out on the main page here is related materials. So on the top right of the screen, you can see there is a user manual, and so that is gonna, go through the calculator and give you pointers on how to fill things out. I highly recommend reviewing that. Even if you have used the CPD calculator before, there's always updates and changes to it, so it's good to have that accessible. Also in the related materials section is links to the different income limits, depending on the program that you are running. For OCR specifically, it's mainly CDBG and home, but if you are running other programs, basically the CPD calculator can be used for any federal program. Yes, so then on the bottom is there's a link, go to my dashboard, and that is going to bring you to the calculator. So you can go to the next page. Once you log in and access the calculator, this is what the main screen looks like, the dashboard. Again, on the top right will be a link to the user manual. It's always going to be on the top right, so even through every step of the process, there will be a link to the user manual on the top right, so you can always go back and access that if need be. And then when you are ready to begin, you can select a program on the bottom and click Start. So now I'm going to go through the steps associated with determining income. And I just wanted to make a note that the slides that you will see are primarily based on CDBG housing, home rehab, home buyer, and TBRA programs. For the other funding sources, different federal programs, every source of funding is going to be a little bit different, but generally the same. So I did want to point that out. Some of these slides might look different if you're running a different program. So the first thing you're going to have to do is select the activity type. And you'll see that there's a little bit of a difference between CDBG and home. Again, depending on the activity for that program, you're going to select whichever one you are running. You can go to the next slide. So the first thing you'll have to do is create a beneficiary ID for the entire household. It's important that the ID doesn't contain any personally identifiable information, such as name, social security, address, etc. The purpose of the ID is to protect personal information. So the ID can be something maybe that you generate in-house. If you already have an ID for them or whatever, you can make it up to whatever fits your needs. And then you're going to select the how many members are in the household. Thank you. Next, you're going to create an ID for each individual member in the household. This one you can only see there's one column because I just selected a one-person household here, but if there were multiple members in the household, then you would see a column for each member. And again, making sure that the ID really doesn't have any personal information to protect the individuals that you're serving. And then underneath the box with the ID, there's going to be check boxes. So if any of those are applicable to any of the household members, you can select them, or you can leave them blank if they are not applicable. Let's see. All right, so after you have created the IDs for the household and each member, you're going to select the location and the income limit that you are utilizing. So in this case, I selected New York State, Albany, Schenectady, Troy, MSA, and the applicable income limit, I selected 80. Generally, home and CDBG are capped at 80% AMI. Again, every program is going to be a little different on what the income limits are. For example, home TBRA specifically is capped at 60% AMI. So you want to make sure that you are aware of which limit you are selecting. And if you're not sure, always check with your project manager. And then once you select all three of those options, the calculator is going to generate the specific dollar amount on the bottom. So you can see here 80% AMI for the Albany Schenectady MSA for a one-person household is $66,000. Alrighty, so next is determining the income method. For CDBG specifically, prior to selecting the method, it asks you a question about low-income housing tax credits and whether or not they are involved. You can see here, if yes, then it will automatically bring you to the Part 5 method, and if not, it'll bring you to this option where you can select either Part 5 or 1040. The home program just cuts right to the chase, and you can select either Part 5 or 1040. Both of these options are allowable for either CDBG or home. I'm not going to get into the specifics of the requirements of each method. That's something that, will probably be another presentation. You can always check with your project manager about the specific requirements. And again, on the top, you can't see it in the screen, but on the top right is always going to be a link to the user manual. So you can always go back and that will go through how to fill out, the specifics on kind of each method. So the first method we're going to go through is the Part 5 Section 8 method. If you were to select that method, it would present you to the screen. At the top, you can see there's a tab for AB. That is just the ID that I created for this member. If there were multiple members, you would see multiple tabs with each member ID. And then you just add whatever source of income they have. And yeah, so if they have employment, you'd select employment and whatnot. So for this example, I'm going to go through employment and benefits just to kind of show you what it is like. Sorry, you can go to the next slide now. Thank you. So for wages and salaries, employment, there's two ways you can input the information. You can do it hourly or annually. If they do have an annual salary, it's pretty simple. You just put in the annual salary. However, most folks that we serve tend to have pay stubs, so you would input the hourly wage, the hours per week, and weeks per year. Again, that's going to depend on that specific individual, so whether or not it's weekly or biweekly. If they have, if the hours vary per paycheck, generally you're going to want to take the average hours worked per paycheck and input that to get an average estimate of how much they make per year. There's also a spot for anticipated overtime or bonuses, and as well as if they anticipate a raise or a COLA increase, you can select that as well. And the next is benefits and pensions. Again, another common source of income that we see with the folks that we serve. This one is fairly simple. You would just put in the benefit or pension amount, the frequency, so that sometimes is weekly, bi-weekly, twice a month, monthly, etc. And then you put in a little description, so you know what source of income you are putting in. So once you enter the source of income for each household member, you'll see like a little summary for that member for each tab. Again, you can't really see it on this screen because it just took a little screenshot, but you would have this little summary page for each household member. And then on the bottom right, you would click calculate, and that's going to bring us to the total calculation. So this would be the summary of the entire household. It's going to tell you, it's going to break down each source of income and assets, and it's also going to show you the result of whether or not they are eligible. So on the bottom screen, you can see here, I did a little zoom in. This household, it shows the total household income, the location, the income limit that we selected for the number of members, and then it will specifically say the household is below or above the income limit, and then have the completion date. So it'll be very clear whether or not they are income eligible. And then on the top right is going to be a little square. You're going to select export to PDF, and that is going to save the work. You're going to be able to download it and print it and save it in the household file. On the next page, it'll show, this is basically like what the download looks like. Essentially, it's just a clip of it, but it will show the member ID, what source of income they have, when it was completed, the type of method that you selected, and again on the bottom of that page, it's going to have the results. So you'll be able to see whether or not they were income eligible. The other method that we allow is the 1040 method. So this uses the IRS 1040 form to document as a source of income documentation. This is much simpler than the Part 5 method when importing it into the calculator, because you're basically just copying the 1040 into the cells, and then on the bottom you click calculate. Again, it's going to bring you to a summary page. It will show you everything you inputted, whether or not they're income eligible. And then again, you're going to select export to PDF, and you'll be able to download and save your work and keep it in the file. So normally, that is where the CPD calculator ends. However, if you're doing a rental project or you're doing rental assistance, then you'll usually have to continue to calculate the adjusted income to determine the rental subsidy. So on the bottom of the Part 5 summary and the 1040 method, there's going to be a spot that says continue to the adjusted income. So you'll select that, and that will bring you to the adjusted income section. So the adjusted income is basically asking about different expenses that can be deducted from the income. So specifically, it's going to ask you about dependents, childcare expenses, disability expenses, medical expenses, and whether or not anyone in the household is elderly or disabled. If you're unsure, you can check the user manual, check with your project manager about the requirements for these specific items. So then after you answer all of those questions, again, it's going to bring you to a summary page. It's going to show you the annual income, any deductions that you put in. For this example here, you can see that I selected 2 members that were either under 18, disabled, a full-time student. So a certain amount got deducted because of that. And then that is going to essentially compute the adjusted income. And again, just like the other ones, you're going to want to export to PDF, save it in the file as proof of your income determination. And then on the bottom of this screen, there's going to be continue to rental assistance, and you'll select that, and it's going to bring you to the rental assistance section. So this, the rental assistance, the first thing you're going to do is have to select the rental model that you are using. So for home TBRA, you're going to select the voucher model, which seems like the opposite of what you should be doing. You would think you would select home TBRA model. However, the home TBRA model is specific more towards like larger rental projects. So for home TBRA voucher model, again, if you're not sure, check with your project manager on what method you should be using. Once you select the specific method, it's going to ask you to import or input various items such as the rent that the owner is charging, the payment standard, minimum tenant contribution, some other items as well. Again, I'm not going to get into specifics about how to determine those numbers. That's something you would want to talk to your project manager about, but this is where you would put that information, and then you would continue to the next part. So then again, another summary page. This is going to have a breakdown of all of those important numbers. It's going to tell you exactly how much rental subsidy that you'll be allowed to pay on behalf of the tenant, how much the tenant has to pay if there's any utility assistance. All of that is going to come from this form. And again, export to PDF, save your work, put it in the file. This is gonna base your assistance to the tenant. And that is pretty much it. It is a lot of information, but also, as you can see, you can tend to go through it kind of quickly. But if anybody has any specific questions on the calculator or want me to go back, I'm happy to go back over anything.